Is anyone around? Anyone alive? Or dead? If you're dead, don't answer.
Martian Gothic Unification is one of the more fascinating games I played in some time, for all the wrong reasons. A fever dream feels appropriate in describing my experience with it. It's one of the many Resident Evil clones that popped up in the late 90s to early 2000s. Resident Evil in a Mars base is its unique spin. It's intriguing, engaging, plenty atmospheric with interesting ideas. Of course, interesting ideas depends on the execution. Well, the execution of Martian's Gothic is interesting to say the least. Most of it not positive. It starts strong with the survival horror focus. The more point-and-click style logic rears its ugly head. And boy is it ugly, just like the game's trimorphs. Excessive backtracking, a ridiculous amount of items to pick up, frustrating item management system, bizarre puzzle logic. Becomes an absolute chore without a walkthrough. Yet, I can't help but be fascinated by Martian Gothic. Not in the sense that it's so bad it's good. More about a small team biting off more than they can chew. They tried to write checks they couldn't cash, both from a figurative and literal standpoint. This would be the final game by developer Creative Reality. They shut down after its release. There are moments of brilliance that shine throughout. There are elements within here that makes me think some of the higher-ups who worked on Dead Space played Martian Gothic. I hope you're in the mood for some frustrating survival horror. Let's dive in and take a look at the good, the bad, and the Gothic.
Do you wish me to get intimate and call you by your personal name of Kenzo?
Yes.
I think I'll stick to your family name of Miji. I never get intimate on the first date. At least, not before midnight, Kenzo.
Before we get started, there were two versions of Martian Gothic, one for PC released in May of 2000. The other was for the PlayStation November 2001. The version I'm playing here is the PlayStation version on the DuckStation emulator. If you're a fan of Ross's Game Dungeon, you may have seen his episode on Martian Gothic. Go watch it if you haven't. He's one of the best, most consistent channels around. For his video, Ross played the PC version, and seeing all the hurdles he had to go through to get to work on modern operating systems, I chose the PS1 version. There were a number of game-breaking bugs impacting the PC version, which were fixed with patches. The PS1 version, coming out a year later, had a number of fixes and changes. One change being computer stations now have 12 saves available, instead of the 2 or 3 on the PC version. For how merciless this game is, 10 additional saves per computer station is a godsend. I also have a brief history with Martian Gothic. In the heyday of the PS2, I had a friend tossing out a bunch of old PS1 games. Martian Gothic was one of them. Amongst that pile, that cover art grabbed my attention. I get the Mystery of the Druids vibes from it. I played for maybe 30 minutes and quit. In that pile was Fear Effect, which I've done a video on, one of the more interesting Resident Evil clones to pop up during this time frame. For good reason. Martian Gothic is on the other side of the coin. It's funny that despite the PS1 version having most bugs and issues ironed out, I came across one that almost derailed my playthrough, which I'll get to later. We get a bit of narration setting the stage here.
I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself a king of infinite space, were it not that I have bad dreams. 4 centuries have passed since those words were written. We have begun to penetrate infinite space.
No, this isn't Judi Dench. It's Fenella Fiedling, a prominent British actor in the same vein. The year is 2019. The first settlement on Mars has gone radio silent for 10 months. A team of 3 is sent out to find out what's gone wrong. Martian Gothic plays in the style of traditional survival horror. Fixed camera angles, tank controls. Stephen Marley, scriptwriter and designer, had the idea for a novel of a haunted house on Mars since the 1980s. He'd forget the idea until playing the first Resident Evil. In Martian Gothic, we control 3 characters. Karn, the American dude, Matlock, no, not that Matlock, the British lady, and Kenzo, the Japanese guy. Each of them have their endearing quirks and memorable lines. Things are foobar within the base. A hokey sense of humor is one way of coping.
Aha! I like it when a door opens. Lowest caliber in the solar system, used by old ladies to shoot mice. There's something in Resoc antechamber. It's big, it's mean, and you wouldn't want to share a beer with it, know what I'm saying?
He's wearing a hole where his heart should be. A bullet hole. Whoops.
Especially when it comes to Kenzo. Some of his reactions to these horrifying events sounds like he dropped a dime down a sewer grate.
Of all the sights I've seen so far, this is the saddest yet. Well, call me a techno-zen hippie, and I've been called that before. But there's a dead man hovering in front of me in the Boulevard Saint-Michel. I can hear him speak, in my mind. So, we've got reanimation, telepathy, and levitation. Now I call that downright supernatural. An alien haunting.
Are you on something, Kenzo?
Controlling multiple characters is something other survival horror titles have done. In Sweet Home, we had control of a party of 5. Bringing up Fear again, we hop back and forth between 3 characters, at the game's choosing. In Resident Evil 0, we control Rebecca and Billy. Martian Gothic takes a different approach. We could swap back and forth between the 3 characters at any time. However, as the idea is drilled home, stay alone, stay alive.
Yori was the last to transmit a message. Stay alone. Stay alive.
If you send a manned craft, warn the crew. Stay alone. Stay alive. And for God...
Stay alert. Stay safe.
Like the song says, you gotta keep them separated. For the first stretch of the game, they're gonna stay that way. Karn, Matlock, and Kenzo enter at separate points of the base. It takes some time before we can unlock doors allowing for our paths to cross. So what happens if you decide to come together? Well, game over. Or sayonara as the game says. What a charming game over screen. I appreciate how Martian Gothic eases us into this 3-character dynamic. At first, only Kenzo can leave his starting location. After some progress, Karn can leave his starting location as well. Finally, we could get Matlock out of her starting location. These sections where they're all separated are the game at its best. The early stretch is where the game is more survival horror than a point-and-click title. Martian Gothic makes its own little tweaks to the survival horror formula when it comes to combat. The non-dead, as they are known here, act like zombies. Thing is, you can never put them down for good. They'll get knocked down for a few minutes with enough bullets, then they'll get up again. No amount of firepower ever really keeps them down. It's an interesting idea with some decent execution. There is great tension with the number of bodies we come across in our travels. Early in the game, only a few will rise up. As we progress further, more non-dead will rise up to attack. Early on, we have limited ammo. They take a number of shots to go down. Once you get further in and start crossing paths, you'll have access to better guns. Ammo conservation isn't a big issue. Corpses or lockers offer plenty. What about evading the non-dead? Well, it's possible in some areas. However, many hallways are simply too narrow for it. It's very tough to get by without taking damage. In the end, you end up gunning them down for a time and the process repeats. The longer the game goes on, the more frustrating this gets. Another aspect that we have to be aware of is switching away to other characters. Switch them in an area with enemies, we'll get a warning, and switching back to the other will have them under attack. Thing is, the AI is exploitable. Enemies will have an invisible wall where they won't cross in various sections. They're pretty easy to figure out once you get a hang of it. Funny enough, a number of save rooms aren't safe. More so at the beginning of the game. Of all the places you think would be safe, you think a save room would be clear of enemies. Speaking of save rooms, we have limited saves as I mentioned earlier. Along with limited saves comes a limited inventory. Martian Gothic has one of the most frustrating limited inventories I've come across in the game. I'm a fan of limited inventories when done right. Best example are the classic Resident Evil titles, planning your next venture out, deciding on how many slots to keep open. A more recent example includes Signalis, offering only 6 slots the entire game. A good example of a limited inventory getting in the way is Silent Hill 4. The frustration outweighed the decision-making element. Martian Gothic dials that frustration up to 11. Each character has 18 slots available. Seems like a lot, doesn't it? Well, before you know it, your inventory is full. And no, it's not an ammo issue. Ammo stacks here. Same with health kits. Martian Gothic has a ton of one-use items for progression at rates I've never seen in similar titles. There are a number of notes and audio logs for story and puzzle purposes. Thing is, these stay in your inventory. There is no separate tab where they go after reading or listening to. This eats up a ton of space. You can't drop items on the ground. There are a number of hatches and lockers throughout the base where you can. They either have 6 or 4 item slots for storage. There is no central item box. The computers will tell you which hatches and lockers contain which items, thank God. Although I found it easier to write it down on paper. Yeah, you could tell how this got tedious and frustrating in a short amount of time. How do we get items to the rest of our party? We're supposed to stay alone, stay alive, and have blockades in our way? Through vac tubes. Remind me of those tubes they use at Costco to send money to the back. Vac tubes are common throughout the base. Need to get a key item to someone else? Healing items, ammo? Load them into the vac tube to send over. When it works well. You get into that flow of figuring out who needs what in order to progress. Especially at the beginning of the game before we picked up a ridiculous number of items. When we get to the point of unlocking key doors and start crossing paths is where item juggling induces juggling your sanity. Back to Resident Evil. The number of times you'll come across a roadblock. A short time after, you'll find an item to pass said roadblock. You know right away where you need to go. With Martian Gothic, you'll pick up items that you won't use for hours. You'll look at them and go, huh? As you pick up items at a rapid rate, it's easy to lose track of where you stashed that item. It's easy to fall into frustration. An item you found hours ago is stored in some hatch. Yes, you could switch with someone nearby to use a vac tube to transfer it. Thing is, by this point, you have more non-dead popping up in your way. By the backstretch of the game, I was making heavy use of a walkthrough. Less about the solutions for progression, and more about what items I needed to bring along. I could see what they're going for, and for a short period of time, the system works well, but only for a short period. Then you're overwhelmed with items as the game gets into point-and-click logic. Why was this the case? Well, the initial vision of Martian Gothic was more Resident Evil on a Mars base. Another team was working on a point-and-click adventure project with another company. The other project was cancelled. A number of elements would make their way into Martian Gothic, one being the 3-character setup. The other being a number of item puzzles. Lots and lots of item puzzles. Before we go into examples of some of these bizarre puzzles, I will give praise to the map system. Instead of a standard map showing each room, Martian Gothic uses the names of famous train stations or streets. It gives a general outline of the base and where key doors are. As a result, there is some time required to get a feel for the base. Due to heavy backtracking, you'll come to know the base like the back of your hand. It's a nice balance of taking some time to learn the map and locations and having it ingrained after a while. So let's go through some of the more perplexing moments with Martian Gothic in regards to puzzle logic, which at first are rare. The first third of the game is pretty tight logic-wise.
I like the way you scream.
There is one hand you need Kenzo to use a hacksaw on to send to Matlock. It's something that's easy to miss, but that was about it for the first third.
What am I doing? This is really horrible.
There's a room with a wall breach, which we use a balloon and bicycle pump to plug. Looks like Kenzo wants something else to breach instead.
Groovy.
There's one door you need to blow open with a combination of items. It's one of those item combinations that have been difficult to find out without a guide. At this point, your inventory is overflowing with odds and ends. Then we get to the trimorphs. There are a few of these wandering around the base. These are the creatures we turn into if we get too close to one another. One involves trapping one within 2 doors. Thing is, there's no real warning about them the first time you come across it, beyond hearing the noise it makes. The margin of error is tiny. One hit is all it takes for death. Another benefit of playing an emulator is the use of save states. This took me a handful of tries to get right. Another involves the remote control car with a magnet to pick up an item in a hole behind one of the trimorphs. Another encounter with a trimorph requires them to run past us. Then we use an item on a door, say a phrase, and then flush them out.
Adios, Trimorph.
This information of what to do came from an audio log that you may have found hours ago, depending how you're playing. There's one puzzle that requires 2 of our characters in the same area, an element that goes underutilized. You need to activate 2 switches at the same time. They're too close to stand next to each other. So one needs to use a pop gun, an item that, once again, we found ages ago. For whatever reason, I couldn't get this to work. The one at the switch wouldn't hit it. I tried aiming at different switches. What worked? Well, I switched to use the pop gun and it worked. Why? Well, who knows. We eventually descend an elevator to the necropolis below the base. Things are spread out here, and depending on who you bring down can create excessive backtracking. There's a number of doors in the base that require key tags of various colors.
Yellow tag required.
One key tag for a door doesn't work. We need to use this contraption down in the necropolis to change its color. Thing is, the area where the keycard can be used requires progression nearby that only Kenzo can do. This ended up being a long backtrack to the far end of the base as I took Kenzo down below, instead of using someone else to use a vac tube to send over. Again, this is where I really started to read ahead with a guide to know what items to bring to avoid excessive backtracking. The area the key tag unlocks requires information we picked up from a note hours ago. Thankfully, I wrote it down on paper. Else I would have had to find that note again. A note in one of the many lockers or hatches. As you can see, a number of issues pop up due to items sitting around in your inventory for a long time before you require them. Which is okay in a game where you have few items. In Martian Gothic, items continue to pile up on the irregular. When doing a retrospective on the game, writer and designer Stephen Marley mentioned that Ben Gunn, a survivor on the base, was supposed to provide far more hints than he does. For whatever reason, that didn't make it into the final release. This leads to a number of puzzles where I read what I need to do and think, well, how was I supposed to figure that out? How did I know that was the combination of items I need to bring? As opposed to eureka moments. As mentioned earlier in the video, I nearly came across something that made the game unbeatable. PS1 version I'm playing here fixed most of the issues from the PC version. There's one section where Matlock is chased by a Trimorph in the vents. This was a major bug that plagued the PC version, one in which you couldn't outcrawl the Trimorph and couldn't continue. Ross brought it up in this video. It's prominent on the PC gaming wiki page for Martian Gothic. For whatever reason, I faced the same bug on the PS1 version. Why? Who knows? Looking at walkthroughs, no one mentioned this issue for the PS1 version. I found a post on GameFAQs from 2009 with the same issue for the PS1 version, but 0 responses. So the thought of having to start over was not appealing whatsoever. Thank goodness for emulation. Thank goodness DuckStation has GameShark cheats built in. Making Matlock invincible? That didn't work. But there is another way to get into this room that this vent leads to. Problem is, there's a keycard that we need to get in. The keycard is inside the room. There's a GameShark code where you're able to open any keycard doors. So, crisis averted. I was able to complete the game. While so far I've been negative on the execution of Martian Gothic on numerous fronts, its plot and atmosphere deserves praise. It pulls heavy from the likes of Resident Evil and System Shock of piecing together what happened here. Through a number of notes and audio logs, we learn about the people in this base. They uncovered something below that gets into Lovecraftian territory. There are some personal stakes as well, as we learn further in the story that Karn has a past with one of the colonists. And there's a fair amount of lore and backstory here to dig through and put together. It's well thought out, and the audio logs are well voiced and written. I was invested into figuring out what happened here.
February the 18th, 2018. I went out into the graveyard this morning. The grave of Terence Whitaker had been opened up. The coffin was shattered to pieces. I didn't see Whitaker's corpse, but there were the prints of bare feet in the soil. Request immediate and total evacuation of Vita Base. Fancy a holiday on Mars, Allenby?
I have to think someone on the Dead Space team played Martian Gothic and thought, hey, we could do this but better. There's a survivor as well, but he's off his rocker.
We are in you and around you. We, the one of Akarak, solitary and myriad. We are in the rhythm of your blood and breath. Beat by beat, breath by breath, you come closer to our enfolding arms.
And why is it okay to go near him? Well, he did come up with a cure that we need to put together in the last stretch of the game. The base also isn't just a stretch of metal corridors. There are living quarters on a colony that was once full of life. The areas are distinct, making it easy to navigate through the base and make a mental map of it.
Neo-retro decor, a mishmash of styles from all over the place. The entire base was decorated in clashing designs supposed to supply visual variety for the base members. Doesn't do anything for me.
Another source of exposition and enjoyment is Mood, the base's supercomputer. Great voice acting and full personality. Some of the game's funnier moments comes from her conversations with Kenzo.
My full name is Kenzo Yuji. Have you heard of me?
What's this, fishing for compliments? You're Earth's most renowned techno-zen hippie, king of the info-meshers. Must be a great honor for you to mesh with the solar system's most magnificent computer.
On the computer systems is a game called Martian Mayhem 2. In universe, it's regarded as the worst game ever made. There's no game to play. Instead, we get these bizarre, charming audio blurbs.
I can see that, but I can't reach it.
I can reach that, but I can't see it.
Maybe if I pull this lever, my hat will fall off.
Oh no! Monsters! Monsters!
Don't growl at me, you monster. It's ass-licking time.
I can't reach that from here.
In-game, the music weaves in and out, although there's one point during the track where it gets really loud out of the blue.
People screaming, people changing. I remember the warning about contagion, so I stay clear of dialogue.
There is a great build-up to the necropolis that lies beneath the base. There are some great visuals down here, but it's also a case of the developers writing checks they couldn't cash. Development had 7 core members on the team. Small team even for that late 90s timeframe of development. There was a lot of love put into Martian Gothic. Even through the sheer amount of frustration it generates, it can be felt. At times it makes its way to the surface, in particular that beginning stretch of the game. But then it descends into utter madness when finding which item to use where. It's not a case of being so bad that it's good. Fascinating is the better term. One where you could see that deep down there's a great survival horror title within. I love the unique spin of controlling the 3 characters while keeping them apart. Despite the frustration, I want to know what happened here. I want to see what was next. Martian Gothic is the kind of game we don't get anymore. There are plenty of these survival horror titles during this time frame with small teams and budgets. A budget title. One where publishers shrugged their shoulders and said, put it out and see what happens. While it's nothing that I'll play again, Martian Gothic will stick in my mind. Yes, some of it's due to its frustrating elements. Trying to figure out which bloody item that I picked up needs to be used in order to progress. But the first stretch of Martian Gothic is engrossing. I was invested in figuring out what happened here. It's too bad this would be the studio's final title. There were plans for a sequel and a prequel. From the lessons learned in a larger budget, they could have had something special on their hands here. Sadly, that wasn't to be. Thanks for watching.
Let's conquer Mars some more.
I have a big gun. This door is locked.
Look out! A British guy marching purposefully across the Martian plains.
Hands up, you blighters! Yes, it was me all the time. I'm not gonna let you young types take over Mars. I claim this planet for the British Empire.
Suck on my thumb, funster. I have a big gun. This door is locked.
Look out! A monster! This door is locked. I can't see that.